name is Katie, and welcome to my podcast, Smitten with Knittin', where I talk about all things knitting and my occasional endeavor into other crafty adventures. So thank you so much for joining me. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for your support. Either way, I hope you find today's episode to be fun and informative. And certainly I would love for you to subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast and consider giving me a thumbs up too, right below this actual video. So it's been a while since I last podcasted. I think it was Labor Day weekend when I was last here on the screen. My husband and I left for a trip to Europe not long after that, and when we returned, life, like it usually does, got very full and busy. So I'm not going to go into too much detail right now. I'll talk a little bit about the trip throughout the podcast, but certainly a little bit more at the end. Needless to say, it was amazing, but I'm very happy to be back and be back into a routine, so to speak. So I'm going to just jump right in. So I wanted to give you a quick update on the knit along that I am hosting. All the details are on my Ravelry page, and it's the Smitten with Knittin' podcast group if you are on Ravelry and interested in joining the group. The knit along will continue until October 31st, so Halloween Day it concludes. And the knit along itself is called the Anne with an E Cal. Cal standing for knit along. Anne of Green Gables is one of my most favorite books and movies, along with the new TV series that was recently launched on Netflix. That sort of inspired the premise behind the knit along, and there's lots of different ways in which you can qualify or your work can qualify. So I hope that you'll consider joining in. There hasn't really been a lot of activity to date, so I'm hopeful that there will be a bit more as people conclude working on their projects. I do want to share with you the prize. It was generously donated by Suzanne O'Brien, who is the maker behind Zany's Crafts, and you can find her work on Etsy and at a lot of fiber festivals within the Western New York region. She so generously donated one of her sock blanks, and if you've watched my podcast before, you've seen this beauty a couple of times, but I just feel like it's worth sharing every opportunity I get. So this is a sock blank. If you're not familiar with the sock blank, it is knit up yarn, so it's essentially the fabric that then gets dyed, and you can then unravel it and knit with it. So if you haven't ventured into sock blanks, here's a chance to potentially win one, and if you love sock blanks, here's a chance to add to your collection. So thank you so much, Suzanne, for this generous donation, and I certainly look forward to seeing everybody's finished objects and picking a winner from that. I also want to mention that I am going to include a set of stitch markers that I have made. They're nothing fancy, but I thought that they were kind of appropriate for the theme of the knit along. If you're familiar with Anne of Green Gables, there is a series or a section of the book / movie / videos or TV series rather, where Marilla, who is essentially Anne's mom, she is the woman who adopts Anne. It's her and her brother, but Marilla accuses Anne of stealing one of her brooches, and these little cameo beads were available to me, so I picked them up and turned them into stitch markers, and it reminded me of that scene or that section where Marilla and Anne sort of come to have an understanding with each other, and the truth comes out, and all is well for the time being. So that's the Cal update. And let me just tell you, knit-alongs are fun to host, but they're so fun to participate in too. I've participated in a handful, not too many. I'm at that point in the season where a lot of my knitting is now about knitting for the holidays. So it's kind of focused or intentional knitting. I always refer to January as my selfish knitting month, so I think that that's probably when I'll get back into the Cal loop. But I did enter a pair of socks into a knit-along, and I won. I never win anything. I love getting prizes out to people who participate in my different contests and knit-alongs. But to be a winner in one was just such a surprise. So I have to tell you a little bit about it, of course, and share with you the goods that I got, because they're from makers around the U.S., I think. Yeah, I think they're in the U.S. I know one is local here in Massachusetts, so yeah, I'm going to share with you the goods that I got. But first, I want to talk about the knit along. So Jen Sheelan is a fiber artist. She's an indie dyer out of Hingham, Mass, and she also creates her own patterns. I came across Jen's podcast probably as a YouTube recommendation or just through poking around on Instagram, and immediately just enjoyed watching her. She also has 2 dogs. One's a rescue. I know that one is a rescue. I'm not sure about the other. So I sort of felt a connection to her because my dog's a rescue. Anyways, long story short, she runs this contest, this quarter-year contest. It's called the 4 Seasons Sock Cow. And I entered a pair of socks on a whim, just that I had knit in the summer months, and I won. And it's crazy to listen to a podcast and hear your name, and you're like, well, why is she talking? Oh my God, I won. So thank you so much, Jen, for your generous prize. It was really just exciting for me, certainly. And I'm so looking forward to using all these goodies. So let me share with you the loot that I got. So Jen is a maker, and much like I have connected with other makers, has had some project bags that she was available to or had available to use as prizes. So this little project bag, it's adorable. It's got little turtles on it, all bright primary colors. This bag was donated to Jen as from Ellie Weichel. Ellie is the brains behind Smooch Your Pooch. I hope that doesn't, I hope you can see that it doesn't get blown out. I'll put everything in my show notes as well. But she makes homemade bags. And she's out of West Virginia. So she does sewing and embroidery. So I'm very pleased to be the proud owner of one of her bags and to learn about a new maker. Along with that bag, I'm also going to be able to add to my stitch marker collection. These stitch markers are just so pretty. So they have this little red crystal, and then the little charm says made with love. Okay. You can see it. I know, I apologize. The lighting isn't the best in my room today. It's yet another gray day. I feel like that's all I do is podcast on the gray days. We've been getting rain on and off. It's been quite humid, so I've got my lamps on, but I'm hoping it doesn't blow the lighting out. So anyways, these beautiful stitch marker charms were made by Crystal Westover. She is out of Pennsylvania, and the name of her business is Blue Wolves, and she does have an Etsy shop as well. So again, I'll put that info in the show notes, but I'm really excited. I hadn't heard of this maker before, and I always love collecting notions and stitch markers, so this is really great. And then Jen so generously donated a cast-off hank, as she referred to it, of her own hand-dyed yarn. If this doesn't scream fall in New England, I'm really not sure what does. The colors are just divine. There's some purples and greens and reds and yellows. I love it. And it's so squishy. It's so soft. And it happens to be her superwash merino and nylon blend. So this would be good for socks, certainly, but I'm actually going to make it into a shawl. It's a generous 460 yards as well. So this is Jen's business card. And Jen also donated, along with her yarn, as part of the prize, she also gave me the option to select one of her patterns from her Ravelry page. So, as I mentioned, Jen has 2 dogs, and I have well, I guess he's little, he's a pug, but he's a little round, a little rotund. But she and her husband rescued a 4-year-old English bulldog, and her name is Little Miss Chelsea Bean. And there was a pattern that was created in honor of Little Miss Chelsea Bean. You can see her there. If you watch Jen's podcast, which I highly recommend, you'll often see Little Miss Chelsea Bean in the podcast itself. She often makes an appearance. So anyways, I'm going to use this yarn as part of that shawl, and then I will show you in a little bit the complementary color that I got to go with it. So yes, anyways, thank you so much, Jen. Certainly feel very fortunate to have been the random winner of all these goodies, and it just inspires me to continue giving out goodies and prizes and thinking of ways to further connect with creators. So all that being said, if you are a maker, I would be more than happy to connect with you, share what you have to offer here on the podcast. as I've done with many others before, and just help you grow and your network, and in return do the same for myself. So I love the knitting and fiber arts community. It's a very welcoming one. Okay, so let's get into what I consider usually my first segment, where it's called It's All About the Yarn. So at the end of the last podcast, I mentioned that I was going to take my own adventurous trip into indie dyeing. My mom and I a couple of years ago actually did some dyeing using Kool-Aid. Didn't know what to expect, but it actually was a lot of fun. And we made some really cool yarns, and I've showed a couple of the pieces that my mom knit up on other podcasts. So this time I was inspired by natural dyes, and particularly my own garden. During the spring and summer, I love being in my garden, and even in the fall. It's just a lot of fun to see the different flora kind of blossom and then move on to the next phase of its life. And I really look forward to the spring once the snow starts to melt, seeing the little green buds pop up out of the soil. So natural dyeing, I'm not an expert at it by any stretch of the imagination, but I was inspired by it because we have what's called a pokeweed plant growing in our front garden. Pokeweed berries themselves are poisonous, so they're not to be consumed, but they make a really good dye. And I said to my mom, why don't we give it a shot? Let me get some of these berries. And it's a massive plant. Once I saw it growing, and I was like, oh, that's a weed. And then I saw that it was pokeberry weed. I was like, I'm going to let this keep growing. So we keep the dog away from it for his own safety. But I did pluck a number of the berries down. And MissKnitSea was having a sale. They have a number of natural bases that you can purchase in large packages. So it's their Cloudborne Fibers line. And I purchased a 10-pack of the Highland Superwash Twist Sock. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry about the lighting here. You can see. So that's Cloudborne Fibers through MissKnitSea. So this is just a neutral base. I purchased it simply because it was an 80-20, and it's the Highland wool, and it's 178 yards. So an opportunity for a small set of anklet socks, shawls, etc. And I figured for my first adventure, I'd start kind of basic, and then I'll work my way up to the really luscious yarns. So anyways, and this is super soft. There's nothing wrong with it. But I figured let's start here. So Mom and I spent, gosh, it would have been Labor Day weekend. I think it was that Sunday or that Monday, dyeing yarn. And we are very fortunate. She has a very big island in her kitchen. So we were able to kind of go back and forth between the stove and the island. And this is what we came up with. So it is a little bit pale pink. I had hoped it would be the bright, vibrant color that the actual pokeweed berry is. And when you start to watch the berries dissolve in the hot water, the color is just this rich fuchsia magenta, and it's crazy. It's from nature. It's not anything that's been tampered with. So anyways, I'm learning that it depends on the different chemicals or mordants that you use, how deep the colors can be. And again, my mom and I were just kind of playing around. So this was the outcome, and I'm very pleased with it. I look forward to exploring more natural dyes and actually using different mordants and alums. But I think that this is a good start. We have 4 hanks of it, so you couldn't here. Let me, unravel it here. So just a very neutral base. But again, it works. I will link again in the show notes to the webpage that I used as a reference, because the individual whose knowledge was super helpful in this endeavor does have other guidance and directions on dyeing with natural fiber or natural dyes. And it's something that she used to do with her grandmother. So it's kind of a cool connection there as well. So anyways, that was my adventure in pokeberry dyeing. Next up, my mom and I want to try coffee. Which I think we'll end up drinking more of it than we will with dyeing with it, but we'll see. All right, so a little bit about acquisitions. When I came back from Europe, so when I was in Europe, my vision was, or my hope was, that I would find some yarn stores. The unfortunate part about that was that we visited both Italy and France and made stops in each country, there wasn't enough time to really go wandering or exploring too much on our own. We did get to, but it wasn't to the point where I could, pull out my phone and kind of research or find the local yarn store. It just, there wasn't enough time. The benefit to that is that we have to go back now. So I didn't bring any fiber back from Europe. But when I came back to the States, I caught up on my Instagram feed and found a couple of things that I'm really excited about that will be part of that selfish knitting in January. If I can wait that long, I'm not sure that that's going to happen. So I found through, surprise, surprise, Instagram, an indie dyer out of Alaska. Her name is Anna Hernandez. Bear with me for a second while I unwrap everything here. And Anna owns Skein and the Stacks. Skein and the Stacks is book-themed yarn, essentially, and Anna herself is a librarian. So it's just this awesome connection between what she's passionate about as her career and how she's passionate or connects that with her passion for yarn and knitting. And if you follow Anna on Instagram, Skein and the Stacks is her handle. She often has knit nights at the library and different events. So Anna posted on Instagram, it was available on Etsy, this pack. This is a little bit of her, stellina, or it has some stellina in it. You can see it good. At least I can see it on my end on the screen, so I'm hoping you can. This is the Pumpkin Moonshine, and this is her 200 London. So all of her yarn bases are based on the Dewey Decimal System and then named after authors. This is a superwash merino, nylon, and stellina, and there's 394 yards total. So you could certainly make a pair of socks with a heel and toe in this pink. I actually have a plan for fingerless mitts. So this is totally going to be selfishly used, but I'm really looking forward to it. The colors are just beautiful. They screamed fall to me, and I have to be honest, when we came back from Europe, we were in Italy, where lemons grow on the trees along the streets. I was still in summer mode, and we came back, and everything was pumpkin spice here in the States. And seeing this yarn kind of got me into that feeling of fall, though the weather still has a little catching up to do. So I'm thrilled with this purchase. She also was kind enough to throw in another one of her bases. It's this beautiful purple color, which I know will get used for something. I'm never concerned about yarn having a purpose. But I gotta share with you, Anna's packing is just adorable. So as I mentioned, she's a librarian, and it came wrapped in tissue paper with some washi tape over it that had books. And then she has this little pencil on top, Skein in the Stacks. Again, adorable pencil, library. And then she throws in there her little note, which, oops, sorry, blocked out. A little note, but it's on the back of a library card. And then who remembers these? I remember as a child going to the school library or even the town library where I grew up, and you would check out a book and they would take the card, you'd have your name on it. And I always thought it was so cool because when you borrowed a book, you could see who else had borrowed it. So technology, great, but talk about a walk down memory lane. Loved it. And then, of course, a bookmark, which is awesome. And just to kind of give you an idea of her yarn weights, you can see Lace Fingering Sport. But again, the 200, which is the London, is the one that I purchased. That's the fingering weight. So they're based on that Dewey Decimal System. Just love it. Absolutely love it. What was also sweet about this package was it was an opportunity to grab something from another maker. And that is the Gnome Knitter. This is from Idaho, and I apologize, I didn't look up the maker's name, but certainly we'll find that info and put it in my show notes. This is a little, of course, again, the yarn was called Pumpkin Moonshine. This is a little progress keeper that's a jack-o'-lantern. So this was all about trying to get into the fall feels, and definitely was successful with that. So really, really excited about it. So yeah, I said this was going to be selfish knitting, and that would be in January, but again, I don't think that's going to wait till January. It's just too pretty. I need them now. So anyways, that was an acquisition. Of course, it brought me over to Etsy, and I have a lot of favorites on Etsy. And I'm always looking for things from new makers, but also makers that I've supported before. And one of those makers is Michelle Courier. Michelle is the crafter or the creator behind Beach Dreams bags. And I have one of Michelle's project bags, which I will show you later on when I show you a work in progress. I love it, absolutely love it. I bought my mom one for her socks, and Michelle was having a sale, and she had this little bag up, and it reminded me of the pencil bags that I used to have when I was a student. So I purchased it. Will it actually be used for knitting? Not really sure. It's got a pretty good size base on it. I probably do need to decrease the size of my Notions bag and actually use that bag for a knitting project. Actually, let me show you. So this is my Notions bag right now. And this is made by Artistic Lily. And again, I don't remember the creator's name off the top of my head. But again, put that in the show notes. So this bag was purchased with with a hank of yarn that I'm going to be using in my Find Your Fade shawl when I get to that color. So anyways, I bought the bag totally because I love the colors, but I also happen to have a shirt that my mom made me in this very fabric. And this fabric line is actually called New Bedford. The maker of the fabric designed the inside here has a different one, but that's also part of that line. Designed it after New Bedford, where I live, in the historic whaling district, where all of the whalers' mansions were, the different wallpapers. Some of the fabric patterns are Art Deco in nature. So anyways, this is my current Notions bag. And see, this is what happens when you give me a bag, I just fill it up with stuff. I want to use this for a project bag, and I want to be able to hopefully condense. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, long story, tangent, short. I'm in love. It's so cute. I love the fabric. And both creators are amazing. So this was my newest edition. In August, long before we left for Europe, I finished a pair of mitts for my husband. And I've talked about those at length in previous podcasts. But I wanted to block them. And there's no problem with just soaking them and laying them out to dry. But sometimes, or not sometimes, most of the time when I create something new, meaning it's a project I've never done before, I tried to use that as an opportunity to add to my knitting tools. So when I did my first pair of socks, I bought a pair of sock blockers. Use them all the time now. This will not be the first, and this will not be the last. Or it will be the first. It won't be the last pair of mitts that I knit. So I decided this was a good opportunity to invest in a pair of mitt blockers. Sock blockers there certainly are makers that make beautiful handcrafted ones, but you can also find a number of acrylic or wire ones available at local yarn stores, Amazon, etc. So my sock blockers aren't anything special, but I did have to buy a second pair for my husband's socks because he's got enormous feet. Again, they'll be used. I'm not worried about that. But finding mitt blockers was a little bit more challenging. I had to, there wasn't an acrylic option that I was comfortable with, and I didn't see any that were that wire sort of frame. So I went to Etsy and I searched around, and it was so worth the research and so worth the wait. I was able to find the business called Burning Impressions too, and Megan Talitsky is the owner. Megan messaged me and she said, I got your order, but it's going to take a little while because she does everything by hand and she does it made to order. So when we got back from Europe, I had my mitt blockers waiting for me, which was amazing. And it was so worth the wait and not a rush. I know what it's like to be a maker, and my goal is always to support those that offer something handmade. So these are my mitt blockers. I am in love. I ordered the medium size because I think for most of the people in my realm, stretched or mitts blocked to that size should be appropriate. The snowflakes, I just love them. And the reason I went with this option, or with Burning Impressions too, is that there's a removable thumb. And you might be thinking, well, if you're making mitts, why would you do a removable thumb? Not all mitts have a thumb. A lot of mitt patterns, you do sort of a buttonhole stitch around where the thumb would come out. So there isn't a thumb and a gusset, or there isn't a thumb gusset and an actual thumb piece. So having that flexibility seemed like a wise decision to me. So I haven't officially blocked the mitts yet, but this is what they will be like when they're blocked. So perfect fit. Definitely will stretch them out a little bit. You can see the difference in size, and my husband's hands are bigger. The yarn and the pattern itself would lend itself to stretching, but I think that these, once blocked, are going to be beautiful. So I'm just thrilled with the outcome. So there's a lot of party in my mailbox when we got back from Europe. Some of it, to be honest, I remembered ordering these, but I'd forgotten that they were coming, so it was like, whoa, exciting, these came in the mail. And then some of it was because I went on Etsy, and, well, you know what happens when I go on Etsy and an Instagram. So I wish I could say that's the end of my acquisitions, but it's not. However, in my defense, the next acquisitions aren't for me. They are actually part of Christmas knitting. So Eva's Yarn Shop, which I've mentioned before, is my local yarn shop. And my mom and I just adore going there. This year it is Eva's her yarn shop's 12th birthday. So we went in Wednesday evening of last week to just wish her happy birthday and kind of hang out, look at the new yarn she has. My mom wanted to buy some yarn to make my husband a sweater for Christmas, so we spent some time with Eva. And I just wander around when I go in there. It's a candy store to me. If there were candy in a yarn store and coffee, I would never have a reason to leave. So anyways, as I mentioned, I had this beautiful hank from Jen Sheelan. And to make this little Chelsea Bean shawl, I wanted to do two-tone. I wanted to do this variegated with a solid. So I went over to Eva's sock area, and I found this. It's a Regia. It's their Angora Merino. It's incredibly soft. It's 65 Merino, 25 Polyamide, 10% Angora. This gray color, which I'm not sure again if the lighting is really picking up, but has like a grayish green. It's a gray with like a green hue to it. Matched up with this, which kind of pulls on this purpley color that's in here, and then the green too. I think it'll look really, really nice. It's not a perfect match, but I'm okay with that. I'm trying to branch out and not be so matchy-matchy with everything. So I grabbed 2 hanks of this, or 2 balls of this, to equal the length that I need for the pattern. So, I mean, I had this, I wanted, I had to do it. But then I'm looking around Eva's. My mom is getting the yarn for Robert's sweater, and I see this hat. And I look at it and I'm thinking, that's it. My nieces and nephews, my nuggets I call them. There's 4 of them. I have 2 nephews and 2 nieces, and they're courtesy of my husband's family. I'm an only child, so this is my opportunity to have nieces and nephews. So I'm very grateful for these little nuggets in my life. And I love to try to do handmade gifts for them, especially for Christmas. And historically, I've always bought each of them a Christmas-themed book to help them build a Christmas collection, so that when they're an adult, they would have that to look back on, share with their children, etc. If they so choose to have families, whatever it may be. So I'm going to be on the hunt for a book that is related to stocking caps. And I'll show you one of the projects, actually, because it's pretty much a finished object at this point. But what really caught my eye about these little stocking caps was the yarn. If you're not familiar with it, it's a lot of fun to knit up because it's got this, I think it's called a jacquard print. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right or if that's even correct, but that's how I've seen it referenced before. So Knit Call is by Adria Phil, and Plymouth Yarn is the distributor here in the U.S. So both boys are going to get a hat knit up in this, and both girls are going to get one knit up in this. Now, normally I don't go for the girlish colors, boyish colors, but you need about 1 and a handful from a ball. So it's like 1 ball and then a little bit more. And so I thought, well, if I get 3 of each color, that'll cover me for both hats. So that's why they're getting boy hats and girl hats, so to speak. So I'm really excited. Wait till you see the outcome. It's going to be a fun project, and it gives me gave me the excuse to buy yarn. But I'm planning on putting each hat together. So there's 2 nieces, each have a brother. So those are the 2 nephews. So each brother and sister pair is going to get a hat. And then I'm going to put together a little Christmas package, hopefully find a book that has something to do with Christmas and holidays and stocking caps. And then put some hot chocolate and homemade marshmallows in there. So they'll have a little something for the night before Christmas. Throw in some reindeer food too. So they're the littles in my life. And I don't see them very often, but when I do, I like to make it an opportunity to kind of spoil them. So those were my yarn acquisitions. So yeah, maybe 2018 will be the year of the yarn diet, but I really, really doubt it. And as you can see, I have the wall behind me, but my mom comes. So my mom and dad have a key to our house because they pick up our dog and let him out. She comes and gets yarn off my wall. So really, I'm just stashing for both of us. That's how I justify it. Wink, wink, nod, nod. All right. So let me jump into my foes, my hose, and my whips. So my finished objects are a little limited. I did knit while I was in Europe. I will actually insert a picture. I had the opportunity, the way our flights were, we left Boston, Logan International Airport, and flew into Dublin, Ireland, and then we had a little bit of a layover in Dublin, and from Dublin went to Barcelona. So the cruise itself ported out of Barcelona, Spain. While we were in Ireland, for that hot second they were there, my husband was very committed to having a Guinness while in Ireland. It's what you do when you're in Ireland, right? Fortunately, there was a restaurant, or a little bar, I should say, that opened at 6 a.m. their time. So it was about 1 a.m. here, so technically the bars would still be open. But I have a picture of me drinking part of his Guinness while knitting in Ireland. So true story, their airport is beautiful, and they have a whole section dedicated to wool and sheep and fiber. And I didn't buy a damn thing. I am so disappointed in myself, but that was the first leg of our trip, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to spend all our euros. I don't know what to expect the rest of the trip. I just know I'll have to come back to Ireland now, and I will. Oh my God, it was beautiful, and we were just in the airport, so I can't even imagine what it would be like to be at the countryside. So, anyways, long story short, I knit on the trip, and I knit while in Ireland because that just seemed like the most appropriate thing to do. And out of that came this finished object. This is my Storm Clouds cowl. This is made out of Wonderland yarn. It's their Cheshire Cat yarn weight in the Tum Tum Tree colorway. This is my Anne with an E knit along project. So of course I'm not going to win myself a prize, but this is my contribution. It was a fairly simple knit. The one thing I learned, I started it on my knit picks, the Caspian wood needles. They're the greenish needles. And that was my first that was my first interchangeable set. Knitting this on wood needles was a bad idea. I really should have used something that had a metal, like nickel or something in it. It just, the wood and the fiber really stuck to each other. So it was frustrating at points, not because of the pattern, not because of the yarn, but just because of the needle choice I had made. I also learned a valuable lesson. One should knit while traveling. Absolutely. It's a great way to pass the time if you've got a layover, if you're just looking for something to keep your hands busy. But I made it so I did fine knitting along on the plane, and again when we were on the layover. I brought it out on the actual cruise ship. The first day we were at sea, and we were traveling between the French island of Corsica and the Italian island of Sardinia. And you're out in the Mediterranean, and all of a sudden, boom, there's 2 islands on either side of you. And I was just totally engrossed with what was going on, literally on either side of the cruise ship. And I made a hot mess of this. I did a pretty good job of weaving in my ends, but you can see I literally started colors when I shouldn't have. I ended them when I shouldn't have. I was all over the place. So lesson learned, if you're traveling to a place you've never been before and you want to take it all in, it's okay to put the knitting down for a little bit and absorb it. Fortunately, easy fixes, but yeah, I got a good laugh out of it. It really, again, wasn't a difficult pattern. It's actually quite lovely one. It keeps you engaged because it changes colors, it changes stitches, but I managed to make it really difficult when I didn't need to be. So anyways, the outcome is beautiful. It's quite soft. This will totally be for me. I am thrilled to wear it once the weather again cooperates. I have green eyes, so I think this is going to kind of really make those pop with the right piece of clothing. And again, it's just so soft and cuddly. So that's my one finished object that I have to share. I have another one actually that I didn't anticipate being finished in time for the podcast, but it is. So I have a dear friend that I used to work with. I no longer do, but she and her husband and toddler live in New Bedford as well. And she sent me a message and said, hey, I'm going to make Cora, her little girl, her full name is Cordelia, which is just precious. I'm going to make her an owl costume for Halloween. I guess Cora is very into owls. And she said, do you think you could knit her a hat? I tried a couple times, got started, didn't like where it was going, started again, etc. So I finally decided on knitting the Tin Can Knits barley hat, just as I did for my husband, but in the child size. And I used some Barocco vintage that I had in my stash. And that's the great thing about children's hats. You don't have to often have a full hank or skein of the yarn. You can usually, if you've got some good scraps left, you can make it work. So I took the garter section, part of the hat. So if you're not familiar with barley, it's sectioned off. So there's a garter portion and then the rest is knit. So it's knit in the round, but to create the garter section, you're purling the row, every other row, rather than knitting it. I turned that garter section into the face of the owl, and with my mom's help, crocheted some eyes, because I don't know how to crochet. I really should get on that. I just need to find the free time. So anyways, Mom helped me with that. We put the nose on, which is just long strands that are stitched, and then we added these, my mom suggested adding these little strands of yarn to make it look like feathers. So this is the little owl hat. I did search for a number of patterns, and there are many out there. Ravelry, Pinterest, just a simple Google inquiry. But I just wasn't pleased with how they aligned with, one, my skills, and I was looking to certainly grow my skills a little bit if necessary, but also knowing what Cora needed. The goal was for this to be for Halloween, but also to help get her through the early part of winter as well. So I think the outcome will work. I know her mom is very pleased with it, and I just cannot wait to see her dressed up for Halloween in it. So that was another finished object. Started it Friday, finished it yesterday, which was Sunday. So again, pleased with the outcome. And kids knits are so much fun because they can knit up quickly. They're so little. So as far as my hose go, now I get to show you what I'm doing with that knit call yarn. So I had found the pattern. It's a free pattern on Plymouth's website. You can see these two cute little munchkins wearing this stocking cap. And again, that's why I thought it would be perfect for my nieces and nephews for Christmas. So I have knit one so far. So one down, 3 to go. And I do need to put the tassel on it. But this I started Saturday night and finished very early this morning. So it's a simple 1x1 rib, knit in the round, and then you do decrease. At first it's every 4th round, and then it becomes every other round, and it's simply a knit 2 together, slip slip knit, so you create that band down the middle. And then once on the child, this section flaps over and has the tassel with it. So I think it'll look really cute on my little nuggets. This I also started on wooden needles, and it moved fairly well, but my mom happened to have the appropriate size, because you start on a smaller needle and go to a larger needle. She had the larger needle in the 16-inch, and I didn't. And hers were, I believe, Addie needles. They're the nickel needles. She's had them for years, but it just moved much more smoothly on the nickel needles. So I would recommend, if you choose this pattern and this yarn, go with the metal needle if you can. It just, the yarn moves more smoothly. My other progress, let's see, oh, my whips. So my works in progress, as far as my Find Your Fade and Jessie's Girl are concerned, they're not hibernating long term. They're just kind of in limbo right now. I had last thought about giving up on my Find Your Fade, but I opened up the bag that I have it stored in with all the pretty yarn, and it's not going to be given up on. I will continue with it. I just need to be patient and know that it's not going to happen right away, and that's okay. I've got a lot that I'm juggling right now outside of the knitting world, let alone what I'm juggling here in the knitting world. So it'll get done. I'm not going to put any pressure on myself. That's a me project, and it happens when it happens. But I do have a pair of socks that I've been working on. So this is also in a Beach Dreams bag, project bag. This is the sock size that Michelle creates. And I bought this because of the colors. Those are my colors. Those are my jam. The reds, the teals, the pinks. Makes me think of a vintage 1950s diner. But anyways, in here are my Smooth Operator socks. And that's a pattern by Susan B. Anderson. And I chose it. It's a pretty straightforward vanilla sock pattern. But I chose it because of the Afterthought heel. Which I did one pair of socks with an Afterthought heel. And I will never go back. I will always, or I go back to any other heel. I will always use that method. So right now, I'm just moving along. These again are going to be for my husband, and I just love the yarn. It's Freckled Whimsy, her Just Kevin, 8 stripe repeat, and then I've got the lines in here for the Afterthought heel. So just trying to get a little bit past that Afterthought mark to get the part of the foot done, and then I'll go back and put the heel in. So making progress. They've been on hold a little bit simply because I've been so busy knitting little kids' hats, which I'm totally okay with. Those are like the instant gratification projects that I love, and I know that they're going to a very special home. So that's what I've got for whips right now. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes to try to keep myself on track. Oh, something I do want to mention about these. So I am knitting them 2 at a time, which I highly recommend. If you suffer from second sock syndrome, where you get to that point where you're like, oh, I gotta cast on another one. I always find the first sock would go fast, and the second sock would get done, but just it would linger. So I do like this 2 at a time, and I do enjoy the magic loop. I love these needles. These are Chiagu's sock needles. This is a size 2, 2.75 millimeter. They're nice and smooth. They have a good tip for picking up sock weight yarn, and their cord is awesome. It's actually metal doesn't sound like the right term to use, but it's a cable. Thank you. That's the word I was thinking of. It's like a cable cord wrapped in the plastic, the red rubber. I'm not doing a very good job describing these, but if I hold them up, I'm not sure. Can you see? It will blow it out. It blows it out. There's a cable wrapped in this smooth plastic or rubbery finish. Everything slides very smoothly. The cable itself, or the cord, does not have a lot of memory, so you don't have to worry about it kind of kinking and going its own way. So I highly recommend those if you're sock knitting or embarking on magic loop / 2 at a time magic loop. Okay, good stuff. I'm gonna move along to Katie's Closet, which is the segment where I talk about things that I've knit, or typically my mom has knit, that are part of my everyday wardrobe. The challenge is that what I'm going to show you, I don't have the name for, and I don't have the fiber for. And I texted my mom before podcasting, and literally as I've been podcasting, she's been sending me messages. I can see them on my iPad screen with all the details. So I will go ahead and put them in the show notes, which again are available on Ravelry, but I do want to show them to you in person. Well, on the screen, I should say. So it hasn't been fall yet here in New England. Everything is pumpkin spice, but it's all iced pumpkin spice because it's just been really humid and really warm. But my mom made me this sweater, and she's very good about using up the stash, finding complementary colors and yarn weights. And a lot of times she'll take a pattern And even if it's not intended to be striped, she'll add stripes to it. Or if it's supposed to be striped, she'll make it solid. She's got a good eye for that. So she knit me up this sweater, which is actually, it's done up in 2 pieces. And then you can see there's a seam here down the middle, which she executed beautifully. No surprise there. She's quite talented knitter. So this is, I just can't wait to wear it. I just need the weather to cooperate. It's everything I love about color. It will look wonderful with a number of pieces. It does have a nice 3/4 length sleeve, and I love the detailed edging, the garter cuff that that is part of the pattern. So yeah, I'm just waiting for fall. Which the way weather goes around here in New England, there used to be 4 seasons. I swear now it's like winter to summer and then summer to winter. The fall and spring are just like this bleep on the radar. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen, just because I like being able to wear my sweaters without my coats so I can kind of show them off and know that they're cozy and warm enough. Along with that sweater, she made me a cowl to match it. So you can kind of see the complementary colors. This, it's actually not a cowl, I apologize. This shawl is knit up in a Plymouth yarn. It's one of their newer ones. It is incredibly soft. It's got some nice stitch definition as well. My mom said she really enjoyed knitting with this. Her goal was to make me that set, but I actually brought this shawl with me to Europe. I always get cold, especially on the airplane, and this was absolutely perfect from that evening flight from Boston to Dublin. And then it happened to be that when we got to Dublin, part of the airport is under construction, so we actually had to go out on the tarmac to load onto the next plane to Barcelona. And it was a nice 50 degrees out at 6 a.m. So everybody was dressed in shorts, and I was there with my leggings and my shawl just all bundled up. So this has been to Europe came to Europe with me, and I love it. I can't wait till the weather's appropriate here to wear it. The last piece I want to show you is one where my mom copycatted me, but I still love her. So I had shared with you that Love Knitting contacted me and sent me some of their Melamia yarn, and I spoke with Eva at Eva's Yarn Store, got the idea to double strand it and make a cowl, and I actually ended up making it part of a contest, and it became a giveaway. So I don't have my version anymore. But my mom loved how it was knitting up, and she had some of this cascade yarn out there, and so she decided to do the same thing. And then she gave it to me. She's so funny. She'll always say that I have the better neck for cowls because I've got a long neck, and I love it. It's stretchy, it's warm, it's going to be amazing. I just, again, need fall. So my closet has been supplemented by my mother yet again. And I need it to be cooler because I have a ton of sweaters that she and I made over last season that need to actually see the light of day and not the darkness of my closet. So that's Katie's closet for this week. I will get you all the details on those patterns and put those up in the show notes a little bit later. So that's a lot. I feel like I always say, oh, and this is going to be a brief episode, or I'm going to podcast more frequently. But the reality is, it is what it is. So I appreciate your sticking with me. And I do want to go into my next segment, which is what I consider local love. And this is typically where I talk about all things local, makers and businesses and things I've come across that are related to knitting or the fiber arts. Sometimes I stretch it a little bit and I can still make them connect. But because I hadn't been around, there isn't a whole lot of local update that I have to share. So this time, local love is going international. I've talked about it enough probably throughout the podcast. The trip to Europe was amazing. To be in Sorrento and Pompeii and Pisa and Rome and Marseille was just phenomenal. My husband and I are so looking forward to someday going back. But I also decided this time around in participating in FiberShare that I would do it internationally. I had no idea when I signed up for it what to expect. And as always, the experience has been nothing but amazing. So I sent to Shaw in Austria, and Shaw actually is originally from the States. So she was able to tell me exactly what she was in need of, and I was able to meet those expectations and then throw in a couple of goodies as well. But all I knew was that my partner that would be sending to me was from France. And I got the package the other day, and oh my goodness, I so badly wanted to go back to France. Now I have to go back to France. Aurora, what is my Fibershare partner's name? She just made me this package that is so special that I have to share it with you, because I love the fact that it is from Europe, which I've recently visited, but it's also from indie dyer or maker in France. So Aurora is starting her own business. She sent me one of her bags. She actually is an indie dyer and dyeing up yarn. And I'm actually going to save her yarn for last to show you, because I want you to see the goodies. It's like she knew me all she had access to was my Instagram and maybe my podcast. I think I put that in my sign-up sheet. So this is somebody who doesn't know me otherwise outside of what she could find on social media. So she wrote me this lovely little card, and she notes that she chose to privilege quality to quantity and used French creators in making this package. The yarn itself is a brand that she created. She's inspired by the fine art of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, Art Nouveau and Art Deco. So anyways, yeah, I'm just still speechless. It catches me every time I look at everything. So again, before I get into her yarn, she did include some fabric. This is a fabric swatch that she sent. I'm not sure. I'm guessing it's like a quarter yard size, or what you call a fat quarter. But the Art Deco. My house was built in the 1920s. Love the 1920s. My wedding was themed in the 1920s. It just perfect. And then this beautiful piece too. It's got a very subtle sort of round pattern to it. And what I love is that all the labels were included. So it came, right from France, right from Paris. So anyways, she also sent me this cute little notebook, which I love taking notes in little books, and it's adorable. But I gotta show you the yarn. The yarn is amazing. So, I just can't even. So these are fingering high twists. They are 80 merino, 20 silk. This one is called Alphonse, and this one is called Susie. And these are the labels themselves. She's actually working with a professional designer to create. So this will be her label. And then this beauty is a fingering single, 70 merino, 30 silk. And this is called Victor. And this one that has stellina in it is a merino and nylon with the stellina. And it's called Bertil. I probably am not pronouncing that correctly. But look at these together. If I wasn't feeling the fall, I am now. Oh my God. I'm so spoiled. I don't know what to say. I just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. It will be a pleasure to watch your business grow, Aurora. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. But certainly please know that you have touched me in a way that I never could have imagined. So thank you so much for your generosity and for sharing with me your talent. And I look forward to your future endeavors and seeing that all unfold on Instagram. And oh my goodness, I almost forgot. You got to see these. So she also included thread. Check out how the thread comes in Europe or in France. Aren't these cute? They're like little center pull threads. Totally different than what we would see here in the States. So that's what I love too, just the cultural flair of all of this, and really being able to expand that relationship that I have with the fiber arts community. So that's my local love. It's by no means local to New Bedford or Massachusetts, but it's local to the fiber arts community because the fiber arts community is global. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So anyways, that sums up this podcast. I thank you for sticking with me. And I hope that you will consider tuning in to previous podcasts or even to those that are upcoming. I think I may already have a theme starting for the next one. Before I left for the trip, my mom happened to be doing some cleaning out, and we found some really special vintagey kind of items that happen to be related to the fiber art. So I think that the next episode is going to have a little bit of a vintage theme. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, keep those needles moving, and I look forward to connecting with you either on Instagram or Ravelry or through a future podcast. Thanks so much, and happy knitting.